I've always been attracted to the idea of like, I don't need one thing to like blow up, but if I have 3 or 4 things that are each bringing in some level of income every month, like that's fun in and of itself. And then you're not putting all your eggs in one basket as well.
It's an interesting thing to balance, right? Because it's like, we're called to have, a healthy ambition. Like we're called to, do things and do it well and do it to the best of our abilities. But then also it's like what that leads to sometimes is we have that healthy ambition is we acquire those worldly things. Then it's like when you're waking up every day, is it out of a healthy ambition to do those things? Or is it too, hard on setting to chase those worldly things that can become an idol?
Pastor Dino Rizzo, he said, I want to get to the mountaintop and I don't want to take a selfie. I want to take a group photo.
All right, welcome back to Johnny Talks. This month's episode, we are joined by Chase Maasdorp. Chase is a husband, he's a father, entrepreneur, and former Auburn basketball player. Chase, thanks for coming on.
Dude, Johnny, thank you so much for having me. Excited to have a conversation, dude. Excited to get to know you more.
Yeah, dude, it's a pleasure to have you. I'm gonna break the ice right here. How does it feel to live my dream of playing Division I basketball? Dude, that's just like that's every guy's dream is playing just a D1 sport, but D1 basketball, and you played that at an SEC school, dude. How was that?
Oh man, it was a lot of emotions come with that. It was great. I mean, I had an awesome time. My freshman year went to the Final Four, so I actually remember saying after that, I was like, what more can you ask? I mean, obviously if you would have won it, that would have been nice. But like, what more can you ask for? I'm like, I don't need to keep playing. But yeah, dude, it was awesome. It was also a lot of work and stressful at points. But yeah, I mean, God's been blessing us for sure. So I'm grateful for it.
Dude, how did that come about? Was it, I know you were a walk-on. Was it like a preferred walk-on, or did you have to like show up to school and do a tryout, or how'd that work?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy story. So a little bit of background. So born and raised in Bradenton, Florida. Went to a small private school over here. IMG's in my backyard, so trained there a good bit. Um, just by being in the area, got to develop somewhat of a relationship with Dick Vitale. He'd come to some of our practices and games and stuff. And I was really like a D2 player. I had a couple low major D1s that one specifically that had actually offered me, but I was really a D2, D3 kind of guy. But my number one school, I wanted to go to Virginia Tech. I had Florida State for bright futures in state. I could have gone to Florida State just on the academic side. And then how I even applied to Auburn was my private school was like, hey, you might get some scholarship money. It's a great school. We think you'd like it. You should just apply. So I knew nothing about Auburn. My dad's family is from South Africa. My mom's family's from Puerto Rico. Like
Interesting.
we had, granted, they're both born in America, but like culturally, I mean,
Right.
I really didn't know anything about Auburn. I didn't know I couldn't have named like what schools were in the SEC or the ACC at the time, but I grew up just a basketball junkie. And so anyways, long story short, I got waitlisted. I had a preferred walk-on spot at Virginia Tech, got waitlisted. And then it was down to Florida State or Auburn. Auburn, I didn't have a spot, and Florida State, I didn't have a spot, but there were conversations kind of happening. Visited Florida State and Auburn over a weekend and chose Auburn. And Dickie V called Bruce. From my understanding, I wasn't in these conversations, but from my understanding, Dickie V called Bruce and was like, hey, there's a kid coming from down here, good player. You should give him a look. And I think BP was saying something like, you can't just give him a spot, but he could be a manager, and we have a tryout, I think in September. So, went to the tryout, school starts in August, went to the tryout September, 6 a.m. in the gym. There's like 40 or 50 guys, and just played out of my mind. I mean, I think I literally shot 9 for 10. They needed a point guard, on the scout team. I would say the walk-ons at Auburn are treated probably some of the best in the country. Very much so a part of the team. It's not like you're a separate entity. You read scholarship guys, get all the gear, all the stuff. So it really felt like a cohesive unit. But our main function is scout team, during practice and stuff. So they need a point guard. They had one spot left. They took 3 of us for a 10-day trial. We did 10 days of practice. And then something ended up happening to one of the players, and they ended up taking 2 of us. So that was my story onto the team. And then by the end of the season, we went to the Final Four. My first game that I ever watched of Auburn basketball, I was on the team. I'd
That's
never seen Auburn
hilarious.
before that, so it's pretty wild.
Dude, that's a good story. It's always good to have DQV in your corner. If you got one guy in your corner, that's a
Yeah.
pretty good one to have.
Oh, absolutely. He's the man.
Well, that's pretty cool you clutched up that way. I tried to walk on, golf for D1, and I did not clutch up like you, so ended up
Yeah.
just playing club, but it worked out. Everyone's
Dude,
got
club ball is competitive in
it
college, man.
was. We
I mean,
actually
a
we
lot of
actually
those
won
guys.
a national championship my sophomore year, which
Wow.
was really fun. So we still got to
Mhm.
travel a bunch and do that, but, how was Bruce Pearl as a coach, as a guy? I've heard nothing but good things.
Yeah, I mean, obviously on the court, super fiery, super passionate. Um, I have a deep love for BP. He, has done a ton for us. Um, one of my favorite stories I love telling about Bruce is I tore my ACL after my freshman year, was home for the 4th of July, played some pickup. And we weren't told necessarily not to. Also, keep in mind, I'm not like a core player. So
Mm,
maybe some of the main guys they told not to, but me and actually another teammate came down here. We moved here for the 4th and played some pickup and ended up tearing my ACL. And one, gracious enough to keep me on the team. But secondly, one of the benefits of being at Auburn was James Andrews did my knee surgery, which is unbelievable. I don't ever think about my knee now, but he called me at like 4 or 5 in the morning. And I'm just like, man, praying for you, thinking about you. Surgery's gonna be great. Get you bounced back quick. I'm like, I'm a walk on.
yeah.
He didn't have to do that. So anyways, I have a deep respect and love for him. And obviously he's um not coaching anymore. He's got Steve in place, but BP's the real deal. He really is.
That's really cool. That just kinda shows, like, the culture he was building, right? Like, he didn't have to do that, again, walk
Yeah.
on, but he's like, no, showing out for guys,
Yeah,
12 to 1, he probably tried to view them all the same, so that's pretty cool.
that's exactly right.
Dude, Final Four, is it just as good as it gets? Like, I can't imagine, like, that whole experience.
Final Four was wild, bro. I mean the journey there too. I have the ring here. On the ring, they actually engraved the teams that we played, but
Oh, that's sweet.
it was Kentucky. I mean, we beat 3 blue buds. It was North Carolina, Kentucky, and Kansas was on
There you
our
go.
our trip. So I mean, it was just like a nuts experience. We almost lost to New. I think it was New Mexico State. Um, in the first round, they shot at the buzzer and it almost went in. They would have beat us. And then yeah, we went just kind of on a tear, got hot. Um, and then I don't know if you've seen it or if anyone that listens has seen this, but y'all need to look it up if you haven't. Our Final Four game against Virginia. I don't think about it, but it's just Auburn fans would bring it up. It was a pretty wild ending, like very classic March Madness story. What a lot of fans would say is like a missed call, a missed double dribble call, and Virginia ends up winning the game. Kyle Guy got fouled, and I was actually Kyle Guy in the scout, which is funny. And my instruction was every time you touch the ball, shoot it.
Yeah.
So, anyways, he got fouled at the buzzer. We were up by 2, and he made all 3 free throws
Yep.
with no time left. So it was the ending was sad, but the experience was unbelievable. And NCAA does such a great job of like throwing that party essentially. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a big celebration the whole time you're there.
I do remember that game. I also remember that first round game you were talking about because I went to GCU and we're arch rivals with New Mexico State. So I was like, thank the good Lord that New Mexico State didn't pull that off because they always
Yeah,
like to have something over us. But
exactly.
yeah, dude, that sounds incredible. I do want to transition a little bit to so now, post college, you have started get into entrepreneurship. You have a couple
Mhm.
businesses. Kind of tell me about kind of what you're into right now, what's going on, and yeah, just what you're doing.
Yeah, so entrepreneurship for me started when I was in middle and high school. Playing travel basketball, and the thing then, and it's still a thing now, but like I think it was a little bit bigger then was the whole shoe scene, sneakerheads, that whole deal. And I just quickly there was no strategy, whatever. It's just like my inclination of how I was wired. Quickly realized that man, there's actually a really good opportunity here with the $200 that I had or whatever, to make some money on shoes. And so yeah, I literally I remember one time the last drop I did, I had a buyer in Tampa that he was like, hey, for every shoe you get, we'll pay you $100 above retail. Um, and then I paid all my buddies. I think I got 6 of them to come with me to the mall and wait at like 4 in the morning or whatever. Bought them all Chick-fil-A. My mom was with us. I mean, the talk about the goat. I mean, my mom came and hung out with us at 4 in the morning for the culture. And dude, they sat out with me. I gave them each like $20 and bought them breakfast and just some of the best memories. But that's really like where entrepreneurship, I would say, first expressed itself. Um, And then in college, my senior year was crazy, man. Basketball, I studied mechanical engineering, so I'm a product guy.
I mean,
That's just how my brain works. I took a class in high school called Intro to Engineering, and they had a 3D printer, and that kind of hooked me. My dad's like we went to Best Buy, I felt like every weekend, just like kind of by the mall and stuff. So just always been around tech, and we always had the Wii or the Xbox or whatever was coming out growing up. Because honestly, his family come from South Africa, they were dirt poor, so he didn't have any of that, and so now that he was able to, he's always been on top of the tech stuff, whatever. So, anyways, I give you that context to ultimately say, did mechanical engineering. I like building stuff. I like products. I like technology. And coming out of COVID, the first thing that I would say real deal startup that I got a part of um, was coming out of COVID. And that was my COVID happened my sophomore spring. So I graduated high school in 2018.
okay.
And then we come back for my junior year. My buddy approaches me. He's like, "Hey, I got this idea." He had just graduated. Auburn has like a Shark Tank kind of thing. It's called Tiger Cage. And he's like, "We should do this Tiger Cage thing if you think there's legs to this idea." And basically, it's called Smart Stall. But if you go into like the Atlanta airport, everything's hands free. Paper towels, faucets, you wave your hand for everything,
Mm,
for germs and stuff. And we're like, okay, what do people not want to touch now that we're all thinking about it from COVID? And we're like, well, if you walk into the bathroom stall, you have to slide that latch to lock the door.
mm,
And so we made like a motion censored stall latch. We pitched in this tiger cage thing, patented it. We won like 15K. We got second place in it, won 15K. Bought a couple 3D printers, just prototyped. And he actually still runs it to this day. I think he's raised almost $1 million at this point.
wow.
He just I think the production run is about to finish. So he's like going fully to market. So he's crushing it. And then my senior year, what I was getting to was crazy. So it was engineering is basketball. I was super involved at church, which we'll get to, I'm sure. Um, and then I had just gotten engaged. I was doing Smart Stall, and then I had this other idea the week before my senior year started. And it was basically coming out of being involved at church. And I was the guy, if anyone here listening has gone to church, I was the guy that went up after the preacher spoke, and I'm like, "Hey, if you just made that decision, best decision of your life, we want to come alongside you." I mean, I give you the whole thing. Connection card in the seat back
Uh-huh.
pocket. And man, I'll never forget. There was one service where I saw 20 hands go up saying they wanted to get connected. Their life had changed, and we only got 2 connection
Mm,
cards. And I was just like, "What the heck?" Like, there's got to be, and we were. It was a college ministry, so it was like 18 to 22-year-olds. So I was like, man, I identified a problem. And then about 6 months later, it hit me. Oh my goodness. What if, like, just like I tap to pay at Starbucks for a coffee, what if I could tap to get connected to the church? And so that hit me the week before my senior year and ended up incorporating a company September of 2021. Started to gain some traction. My home church here, Bayside Community Church, was the first church, Pastor Randy, to uh, give me a shot at one of their 8 campuses. And man, what we saw in the first 6 months with that product was that they left a QR code on the chair, a paper card, and a tap just to like see, human psychology, what would happen. And in 6 months, we had 45 people scan a QR code or fill out a card, but we had 1,900 people tap their phone.
mm,
And from that one insight, I would say that's where things started to roll. So now we serve about 1,000 churches with that technology. I actually merged it into a larger company in April of 2024 called Overflow. So now the product's called Overflow Tap. But yeah, man, I mean, we were just at the YouVersion Bible app. They had it on the backs of their seats in the Oklahoma City Thunder Stadium. Like, it's just been cool to see how God's put his hand on it. And I've also built a golf product called Tour Caddy. So I'm in a few different spaces, but as you can tell, I just love like solving problems. Or if I see something, like, I just love to build a solution. So that's kind of how I'm wired.
yeah, dude, that's cool. I feel like that's very common, right? I feel like to be a really, like, at least successful entrepreneur, you rarely see that, like, not come up with someone through, like, growing up. They just kinda always have that mindset, and
Hmm.
so I feel like that's where you really see, like, people that are really successful is like, that's just in them. It's like that's all they really, know is to, keep building something, and so, that's pretty cool. Do you feel like the process, right? I feel like there's a lot of people that may have ideas for things, right? And it's like, "Oh, I have this idea." And then, like, that's kinda me, like, I'm more of, like, an idea guy. I'm not like
Yeah.
I have no idea where the first step is after that. So, like, I can think of, like, Oh, not even like that I'm like super entrepreneurial in that way or even that I wanna own a business, but like I just have like random things come to me like, "Oh, that would be a cool product." And then I'll be like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I don't know what to do from it with there." And then I'll just go about my day. Like, like when you
Yeah.
first have those ideas, like what's the next step after that?
I'd say it's obvious it's evolved. It's an evolving answer every day. I would do probably something different. So I'd say the principle is, well, I was actually on a call the other day and someone was like, "Oh, we're building a product actively." And they're like, "We got to think about all the marketing emails." And I'm like, like cut the marketing emails." I'm like, "What do we need to like build right
Mhm.
now?" And like we can get to the marketing emails later, like I think a lot of people get, it's like analysis paralysis where they're like, it's got to be perfect. It's seriously, in the first startup that I was part of, SmartStall, one of our first investors, man, we learned a ton in that. But one of our first investors, he said, we're both like product junkies, me and my co-founder. And it's kind of morbid, but he said, shoot the engineer and launch the product. So, like, it's not gonna be
Yeah.
perfect. Iterate on it over time, and that's not like Bible, right? There's a bunch of ways to do it. Apple is the exact opposite, where they would say,
Mm.
"Wait to launch the product. Let's test, 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 make it absolutely perfect, blow everybody's mind. We'll be the last to launch it, but it's gonna be the best version of it." Right? So there's different ways to skin the cat here, but, um, that's just the way I'm wired, and I think anytime I have an idea, I go like path of least resistance to, okay, what's the next step? Okay, is that a website? Is that a logo? Like whatever gets you excited, I think is just a great next step. And it's continuing to take those next steps. I just know I have some buddies that I talk to a lot. I actually talked to someone yesterday and similar, like, dude, where do I start? I'm like, what do you think you should do? Like what if you had to do something right now, what would you do? He's like, make a website. Like, go make a website. Just do it.
Yeah.
And then from there it'll build. Now with the reason I say it's evolving though is AI has totally changed the game. And I think there's a lot of people throwing out AI and like it's a buzzword and also, but I genuinely mean like there is a ton of value there. At the same time, you still need to, you know, vet ideas. I think the thing that AI is the worst at right now is like having it make a logical
Mm.
decision for you. Where it's really good is when you say, "Hey, this is what I want to do. Now do
Right.
this." Or ask me questions because it might provoke a question or a thought for you. But if you're like, "Hey, decide for me how to do it," most of the time it's like makes bad judgment calls and feels wrong and stuff. So right now, like I'll probably go straight to AI. Like, how do I build this thing or how do I get to it? That's probably the default. But ultimately, whatever the next step is, like just do that and it'll keep going from
Dude,
there.
I was one of those people that was like when all this AI stuff was coming out, I was like, I'm never gonna use it. Like, I don't want any part of it. It's like you'd hear people being like, it's the devil, it's all this. And there's
Mhm.
obviously things that could go wrong with it and stuff, but I started using it like 2 months ago. Just I had like one question. And I was amazed what it gave me. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, I got this problem. Let me see what it says about this. And it was like perfect. And then I've been using it like so much since then, like creating graphics and doing all that.
Right.
It's crazy what can do. So I totally get that aspect of it where it can be
Yeah.
a
And
huge
it came out. Sorry, no, it came out like right. It was very convenient and inconvenient. So when I was building the tap product, I was a mechanical engineer by trade, which is very different than software development. And it's like mechanical engineers, they typically get into like aerospace or
Mhm.
cars, automotive, etc. And all the coding that we did was like the technical word is projectile motion, which is like think about like missiles going through the air. I mean, that was like what our math was on and like coding physics essentially. Very, very not, fun. And, but anyways, like, I had no idea. I was just piecing stuff together. Chat comes out as soon as I graduate, so I didn't get to use it for any of my school, which was a bummer. I remember putting in it was the hardest senior year project. I had to write the code for an autonomous vehicle to go around, like, a
Jeez.
racetrack. It was a Lincoln MKZ, and, man, I think I got a D on it. I mean, like, did so bad, it's brutal. I put that thing into chat like 6 months later after it come out, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, if I had this." But I say all that to say, dude, I hopped on it early. I mean, I was like vibe coding in 2022 when that wasn't even a word for it. I was in the first, this is just kind of funny, like random fun fact. So in the first 0.01% of users for ChatGPT. I mean, just like going back to my
Yeah.
dad being a tech guy, like we are just on that stuff. And so I find too with like my own ability to build product and stuff, I just try things all the time. I'm like I can feel even getting to tap. It's like I saw Starbucks using tap. I was like, "Oh, wait, why doesn't the
Mm,
church use tap?" So if I just know, like, other
right.
tools out there, other ideas, it helps feed some of that,
That
ideation,
definitely makes sense. Yeah, you were probably one of the first people to use it, and I've been one of the last so far. But I'm team chat right now. It's been helpful. So
Love it.
did you have talked about 3 or 4 business ideas that you are a part of or working on. I'm sure you've had 15, 20 plus ideas at this point. How do you know an idea is worth actually pursuing into a business? Like what about it stands out from the ones that you don't pursue?
Mm. Um, I think so there's a few ways I'll answer that. One is, have you ever heard of Working Genius? Patrick
No, I have not.
Lencioni? It's like a framework. So think of like, enneagrams, right?
Okay.
Like all these different like personality tests. But he has one, it's like it's really for like teams and stuff. But I give that context to say in that test, there's 6 things that you can be, and it's like, this is my
Mm,
genius areas. My genius in their framework is discernment and invention. So, and there's actually a level above that that's called wonder, which is like, think creatives, think art, where it's like abstract thought. I'm not an abstract thinker, but I can invent, which is putting 2 practical things together to make something potentially better. And then I have the discernment to know, is that or is that not a good
mhm.
idea? So I'd say that's part of the wiring a little bit. How that's evolved over time, I would say I'm attracted to things that are like fun and I'm passionate about, etc. I would say like the bathroom stall thing wasn't necessarily something I was like, man, I can't wait to get into the property technology space. Um, but I was working with a friend and it was exciting and it was like got to use 3D printers and so there was like some fun in there and a little bit of unknown that I was excited about. And you start thinking about like, man, that could be literally every stall in the
Mhm.
world. How many? And you start googling how many stalls are in, and you start running like, okay, there's a legitimate, like a total available market for this. The TAM is like unbelievable. So there's like the practical ways that I think business school would teach you. I didn't get those classes, but um, do think a part of it is kind of this gut instinct intuition. And then there really is truth to the saying of like, fail fast. It's like, dude, just
Mhm.
try it. It doesn't have to, don't put pressure on it. I think something that I've said even before I really even knew what I was saying, I've always been attracted to the idea of like, I don't need one thing to like blow up. But if I have 3 or 4 things that are each bringing in some level of income every month, like that's fun in and of itself. And then you're not putting all your eggs in one basket as well. So, um, kind of a long-winded way to say like a little bit of feel, all, obviously the business metrics as much as you can break that down and see. Um, but at the same time, I think there's like a passion component. And then with, the Christian belief system, gotta lean on the Holy Spirit. There's just some times where someone will present now with just kind of what I've been in, like, I'll get a random text like, "Hey, bro, I got an idea." Get that, maybe not once a week, but pretty much once a week. And there's sometimes where I just get that, like, nudge, like, "That's don't mess with that," So there's some of those that you gotta be
Yeah.
hesitant with. Um,
No, that
so
totally makes sense.
anyways.
I feel like I gathered, like, for sure 2 things that stuck out from what you just said. It's doing things you're passionate about. I think there's
Mhm.
always gonna be points where, you don't wanna get up and work, you don't wanna get up and do this, you don't wanna go to this meeting when you could be doing this, but it's like, you're gonna stick with the things you're passionate about, and you're gonna be more likely to be doing those things. So it's like, if you're not actually passionate about a product, like, you may still be able to make it successful, but it's not gonna be as easy to do so when you're, passionate about something and it's in a, topic that you like or an activity you like. And also, I feel like when you're talking about those different, the test, right? The kinda Enneagram type business tests is that, they probably a successful business needs to have all those aspects in it, but we can all only, have
Mhm.
1 or 2 of them. So maybe a key aspect is having people around you that fill those different aspects. You said you weren't maybe um, the most like creative, out there, but like I'm sure you surround yourself with guys that are like that. Would you say so? That's true?
Yeah, you have to. You're absolutely right. Mhm.
Yeah.
You're on the money.
No, so that makes a ton of sense. I feel like there are people obviously who probably have done really well just going at it themselves, and maybe that's just the type of person they are. But I always feel like it's easier
Mhm.
to, they say, what is it? If you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, do it with people.
Yeah,
I feel like that applies.
100%. I actually heard, another good, yeah, and I think my proclivity as I look back is, man, I love 0 to 1, and typically that's done, like, by myself, or I have one guy, Josh Champion's his name. We do a ton together. I think we've now done 3 or 4 ventures kinda together, and we just gel and work so well. I'm typically, like, the product guy, he's more on, like, the marketing revenue side, but we overlap a ton. But, I say that to say, like, there's a beauty of the 0 to 1, and then, man, it's a whole 'nother skill set to go
Mm,
from 1 to 10, and then from 10 to 100 and 100 to 1,000. I mean, like, it's a wh every I remember when I merged my company in 2024, I w they had just brought me in. I didn't only knew what I was doing, and, like, to get onboarded and to, like, go through HR and, like, just, like, I'd never had
mhm,
that process, and so, like, I learned a ton just from the onboarding process on day 1 of like, "Oh, this is how that's done," and like, "Okay, I see how that system works," and there's now we look back like, "Man, that system was terrible. Look at it is now 2 years later," right? But I heard one saying, Pastor Dino Rizzo, he said, "I wanna get to the mountaintop, and I don't wanna take a selfie, I wanna
mm,
take a group photo."
like that.
I
Yeah.
was just like, "I love that." So, yeah, I'm a big people person. At the same time, you know, um, I think I'm very intentional about who I decide to
Mm,
work with because 'cause I've just seen some partnerships and things in the past where it's like, man, if you pick the wrong people or you get associated with the wrong people, it can slow things down. I mean, bad things happen, but that's honestly more unlikely. What really happens is like people get frustrated, things slow down, politics get involved, etc. And so being super intentional about those
yeah.
people is
And I
huge.
think it's cool also when you're able to build something with people. You're talking about the mountaintop where it's like, you work, you just step by step, you're keeping your head down all those years, and then you get to the top and you look around, and if there's no one with you, it's like, well, what do we do this for, right? But if you get up there and it's like, oh, look,
Mhm.
that guy's my best friend. Look at this family he got to raise while building this. Like, this is my other best friend. Like, this is my
Yeah.
good, we go to church together, and this is his family. He's got to do it. And it's like
Yeah.
you're seeing like the generations change from it. And I think that's just it's
Mhm.
all about the journey. So that's I think a cool part of being able to be an entrepreneur is working with other people and
Mhm.
bringing them side by side and champion things together. You did mention leaning on the Holy Spirit as a business owner. In what ways does being specifically like a Christian first entrepreneur, how does that change the way you go about your job?
Yeah. I think it reveals itself in different ways depending on the circumstances. I'd say, I was talking to someone about this yesterday. There's 2 things that really stick out, I think, um, at least things that I aim for. One is very practical business thing that I learned from an early investor. He said, when we were just talking about, um, growing this business and how do we get to where we wanna be, I think we always have to remember that the Lord goes before us. And it's such a simple, like, if anybody's grown up in church,
Mm,
you've heard that verse. And I think that's honestly a problem that I find myself in. I'm like, I've heard that verse. I read just this morning, put on the full armor of God, and our battle is not against flesh and blood, right? And I've always heard battle against flesh and blood as like conflict with another person. But the revelation I received this morning was like sometimes that flesh and blood battle is the battle between my
mm,
mind and my body, right? And thinking about anxiety and different components that could come in when there's stressful decisions being made. And it's like my mind's trying to will something, but my body's stressed out. And it's like, dude, it's okay. So like there's different revelation that can come out. So, when he goes back to the Lord goes before you, it's so simple, but man, that's the most practical thing I think I bring with me from a confidence, a negotiation standpoint. Like, what I learned from that conversation was I never keep a card behind my back.
mm,
I'm an open, and there's wisdom, like, not everybody
uh,
needs to know everything, but in negotiating, in anything that I've done, I'm very authentic and transparent of just like, "Hey, this is what I think this is what the company is, what the deal needs to be whatever we're talking about for the context. This is what I think and why." And it's just up to the other person to receive that, work with that, etc. And man, it's just been unbelievable to see like the amount of healthy negotiations. I think I've had some like I don't know if I should say traumatic, but like some
mm,
bad negotiations before I had received that device or that advice. And I think that one thing is like totally shifted. Any room I walk into, big investor, etc. We had some big investors recently come in for Torcaddy, and dude, I had no business being on a call with these guys. I mean, like, literally owners in NBA teams and NHL, like, unbelievable, business leaders, and just honored that they would trust in us. But walked in there like, if it happens, cool. If it doesn't, no big deal. But it's because I knew the Lord
Mm,
was going before me. The second one that I think is key, and I think it's like an art, it's a Holy Spirit thing, but it's like we have to be generous.
mm,
We just have to, like not just in our giving, but in our time, in our relationships. I think one of the best way, actually, I would say my favorite way to be generous is connecting two people that should know each other. Like we'll probably get off this call and now I know more about you and what you're doing. I'm like, oh, dude, you need to
yeah,
know so and so. Like that's like my favorite way to be generous. And I'm not a pro at it by any stretch of the imagination, but that's something that I regularly try to keep like reminding myself with, and my wife does a great job reminding me as well. But I think generosity is a huge way that
mm,
we can reflect Christ in the business setting. The last thing I'll say on generosity, one of the best ways to show that too is hospitality. Like if you're hosting a business event, if you're going to a conference and you got a dinner,
yeah,
like do it right, man. Like
mm,
have good food, have good, good service, get the private room, spend the extra money, like whatever it is. I think I heard someone say this to me at a conference in Nashville. He said, hospitality is the
mm,
superpower of Christianity. You think about breaking bread. I
yeah.
mean, like there's so many things that go back to that, but I'll leave it there. Those are like the main things that I think about in terms of like a
No,
day
I
to day
like that a lot.
operator.
I really like the way you brought up generosity. I feel like, if I took a step back and I looked at just me and my wife's journey so far, like in um our marriage, it's been about 5 years just through the growth of what we do and making money and our business and stuff like that. It's the more generous we've been, it's the more God has
Mhm.
blessed us with, where it's just like it's obviously not
Mhm.
why we do it, but it just shows God's faithfulness, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, when you're doing the right
Mhm.
things, it doesn't mean it's like you do something one day and the next day this happens to you, but it's like you can see it correlate. And it's just
Yeah.
such a wonderful way that God blesses, people and businesses that are doing things the
Mhm.
right way. And it's not always easy. It's not always easy to be like, no, we're gonna put this first. And that's not we may have to do something different this month to do that. But it's like, man, it's so cool, especially, we can get so into, keeping our head down the day by day things. I think it's so important to consistently always take a step back. And it's like, just take a look at where you've been. It's like when I've never, we work in the social media industry, so it's not like we don't own a business, right? We don't have, a product or whatever. But,
Mhm.
if I did, I could see myself being so like into the day by day, where I could forget to take a step back
Mhm.
and be like, look where we were 2 years ago. We didn't even have a product yet. And now we're on shelves at this store. It may not be the
Yeah.
store that we're wanting to be. But it's progression.
Yeah.
And I think, taking a step back and looking at that, do you, do you ever focus? So I feel like people that are, almost the most successful entrepreneurs that I see. Um, I honestly see sometimes where their whole identity is their business, and that ended up helping them because it made them work so hard, work the tough hours, do the tough things. Obviously, as Christians, we're called to have our identity in who we are in Christ, and that's not as a business owner. Have you struggled with where your identity lies at all? And if you have, like, how have you, made sure that you keep it on, the correct things while still maintaining a good business work ethic?
Mhm. Um, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely moments where I can get caught up in it. Um, there's 2 things that come to mind. One is something I'm trying to put into practice. I'd say something I'm learning. I was in a room recently, and you gotta keep in mind, I keep bringing up all these church things. Like one of my
Mm,
products, we just serve a ton of pastors, so I'm in a lot of these church rooms. So I have a lot of pastor quotes and stories. But one of them was from Pastor Lane Strands. He's the was like the executive pastor of Church of the
mm,
Highlands in Alabama, and recently was with him, and he shared a story with a group of us, or an illustration, I should say. He was like, "Your job title." His job title's changed like 15 times because he's been with the church for 25 years, and he's seen it grow from 2 people to
yeah, it's
whatever
huge.
they have on a
Big,
week. I mean, they
yeah.
have 25 campuses, right? So his roles just changed. He's just been a servant in all of it. Um, but he was like, your role and your calling, or I should say your assignment, not your calling, um, is like holding a sword in your hands." He was just like, "If you
Mm,
squeeze onto that thing and
mm,
someone rips it, it's gonna hurt." But he was like, "If you can hold it and carry the weight of it and steward it. It's an obvious illustration, but it's powerful. And so that's something that I've been thinking about. He shared that with us probably a month or two ago and haven't forgot about it. And it's been super impactful in terms of not wrapping the identity. Beyond that, I think something that I'd say the one I get caught up most in, is my whole life I've been the young guy. So, like, even going back to travel ball days, I started travel ball in 3rd grade. I played on a 4th grade team, and that was my whole AU career. I was always playing 1 year up, and I was talking to my wife recently. I actually heard
Mm.
of, Levi Lusko, another pastor out in Montana. He actually shares openly now that, he was the young guy. He planted a church early and also and he had this, like, huge, almost midlife crisis when he
Really
wasn't the
interesting.
young guy anymore. And how, like, insightful and, helpful that was to me to convict me of, like, "Dude, do you get?" Because
Mm.
the reality is I'm 26 and, like, you know, the things that the Lord has put in front of us, I understand is not maybe status quo. At the same time, it's not like,
Mm.
we're not Elon Musk over here, right? Like, we're still living a pretty normal life. My wife drives a Toyota Highlander, right? Like, we're not doing anything crazy here. But at the same time, I know the Lord's blessed us and, there's been some really cool opportunities and we've been in some rooms that we just don't belong in. So I think that's the one. So I keep this, like, image in my head of, like, let's not hold the role too tight, and just be open to, like, where God calls us, etc. But then beyond that, that recent insight from Levi, I think is probably my weakest point is, I'm 26, but I'm not gonna be 26 forever.
Mm.
And I remember when I was 20 and I'd started a company. And they're like, "Oh, dude, you're doing that and you're 20?" And so, like, those are the comments I just get all the time. And I know there's gonna be a point, and I'm trying to do the work now to
Right.
make sure that that's not in my heart and to decouple from that identity of, like, being the young guy because it's just not always gonna be the case. So that's where I think I gotta watch. But the sword image is really what I think of when
Yeah,
I'm
that is
like, how do I
powerful.
separate from that?
It's an interesting thing to balance, right? Because it's like, we're called to have, a healthy ambition. Like we're called to, do things and do it well
Mhm.
and do it to the best of our abilities. But then also it's like what that leads to sometimes is we have that healthy ambition is we acquire those worldly things. And sometimes those worldly things are fun, more
Mhm.
money, bigger house, nicer car, all those things, country club
Yes.
membership. It's the one I'm working on right now. And,
Mhm.
yeah,
Praise
so
God.
it's
I receive
it's
it.
those are not bad things in itself, but then it's like when you're waking up every day, is it out of a healthy ambition to do those things, or is it too, hard on setting to chase those worldly things that, can become an idol? So it's always I feel like for me specifically, it can always be, it's always a check moment, every week, almost every day. It's like, "Where's my heart
Yeah.
at today?" Why am I doing such and such?
Mhm.
Just because it can get out of hand so fast because
Yeah.
it's like, that's what those things are designed to do. They're designed to pull your attention away from what's good and what's true.
Gratitude huge for it, dude. It really is. And I'll share a cool story where God's kind of showed up in my journey on that. My goal. So I went to church my whole life, but college, my freshman years of my life really changed, and I was in this, like, my life had changed, and then I did this. They called it an internship, but it's basically like we served at the church, and then we had like a weekly chapel service. It was so, anyways, in one of these chapel services, Pastor Kyle Jackson, who's now down in Cape Coral at Cape Christian Church, but at the time he was at Church of the Hounds. Um, he preached a sermon called "Give Up to Go Up," and I'll never forget it. And the whole idea of the sermon was, you know, as you want to grow in your influence and in your leadership, there are rights that you have right now that you won't be able to have. So, for example, he's a lead pastor. He's like, I'm not going to go to the movie theater and see my students. Like, I'm not going to walk out of a movie theater from a rated R movie and see my students walking in. He's like, "Is that a sin? I don't know. We can talk about."
Mhm.
He wasn't trying to get into the nuance of that, but more so like if you want your influence to go up, there's
Mhm.
rights and things that you have to drop, to receive those levels of influence. So that was the ethos. But for me personally, as a freshman in college, my goal was I'm gonna make $1 million a year as an engineer. That was just flat out it. I'm like, I don't know if I would say that was my life purpose or what, but that was my goal. That was top of mind. And man, I just felt God was like, "Dude, you need to lay that down." And this was really my first God moment. Laid that down, stopped pursuing that. Not that I didn't care, right? And not that I didn't have ambitions, but I just like really laid that down. went through my 4 years, served at a church, started building all these stuff, yada, yada, yada. And it's been cool to see like when the money's not
Both.
the focus, how some things flow, but when it becomes the focus, and I've been on this side too, when it becomes the focus and ambitions on the forefront, how it seems to dry up. And so anyway, and I actually was talking with a mentor last week who's done $1 billion of transactions in the auto tech industry. Man, dude's a killer. And he was preaching it to me again. He was like, dude, the moment you let your selfishness and ambition get in the way of, the
Ooh,
situation, he's like, it's gonna dry up. I'm telling you. He's like, I've seen it for the last 60 years or whatever he said, so I'm trying to heed the warnings,
yeah,
but it's very difficult at times. Especially when honestly, especially once like now that you get into different environments and you get put up in a nice hotel one time, like, man, I never, you fly first class one time, you're like, I never want to fly anything else. Um, Me and my wife just flew first class. The first time we played it with
right.
points, first time that we paid for it. We did our 4-year anniversary trip out to California. And I was like, this is not what we're
It's for the
doing.
trip, yeah.
This is just a one off. If we get the free upgrade, praise God. But we can't let this become like our status quo. So the humility and the gratitude, I think,
Yeah,
is a
I
huge
do
thing we
that
have
all
to
the
come
time.
back to.
It's like, could we afford to do this? Of course. But I didn't grow up like that, so neither's my
Yeah.
kid, It's like, that's not how I want there's different ways, there's obviously ways that I'm gonna spoil him and, make sure that, he gets certain things, but at the same time,
Yeah.
I also don't want him to grow up in a way where it's like everything's just given to him and he expects to, do all these things. So I'm in that too where it's like, even though just because you can't afford to do something doesn't always mean, that's what, we should be doing. So that's funny. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
money's an interesting thing, man. It is crazy. You hear the stories of, these professional athletes that were making tens of millions of dollars a year. And they're talking about how they didn't spend it correctly. And so they're having to live off, a few $100,000 a year right now and how that's so tough. And it's like for, a normal person, that sounds like an amazing opportunity to live off of that. But it's like, based on how they were learning how to spend that money, it's like to them, it's impossible. So it's just money's always a tough thing. It's always a interesting topic, but, when you are an entrepreneur and you are dealing with that every day, I feel like that comes up even more of a topic because it's like, you gotta sell your products to make the money. It's not you're not getting, the salary from, the business
Yeah.
that's, it's coming at the first of every month. It's a different thing. So I feel like I could see that easily coming into more of uh, a factor. But I want to transition a little bit. You became a father recently. So you were obviously you worked in entrepreneurship before, then you became a father. What has as far as success in business changed since becoming a father? I'll put it that way.
Mm. Um, yeah, I think you realize this year has been tough for me in terms of travel, dude. It's not been like, there's definitely people that travel more than me. And I don't, I love
Yeah.
when I'm somewhere, but I don't love getting there. I'm like, I just don't love the actual travel itself, going to the airport, all stuff. But I've probably been the first 12 weeks of 2026, I was out of town or I had an event of some sort for the first 8. And so, and it really just hasn't slowed down. Even, I'm home this week. Last week I was in Nashville on Monday. Next week I'm in Alabama. So it's just like the thing I'm learning right
Ooh,
now is that my calendar has controlled me and how can I better control my calendar? But yeah, I think that's even more emphasized now that there's kids in the picture. And it hits different when you're single and you go stay at a hotel, but now when you're married and you have a kid at home, it's
nah,
like, man, I do not want to be sleeping in this hotel by myself right now, and I'd rather be hanging out in the living room playing with Ivy. Um, so I'd say that's one of like the more practical things that shifted. Um, Outside of that, I think it's been really a balance going back to calendar of, um, and I'm definitely not good at this. I'm not good at this. I'm trying to solve it. I had a lunch today with one of my best friends and we were talking about this exact topic. It's like the whole balance of, think about quiet times in the morning. And I know you can relate to this, but it's like quiet times in the morning. I'll give you a great example. I was in Nashville on Monday. I landed at like midnight, got home at 1. My wife's birthday was on Tuesday. Our baby decided to wake up at 6 a.m. and she never does that. And so it's like I got 4 hours of sleep, definitely didn't get my quiet time in, and I'm
Oh,
just
no.
like, it's the rhythms, it's like, how do you find the pockets? How do you still try to stay tethered? Something I try to pray often is like, "Holy Spirit, help me to be aware of your presence today." Like, I don't need anything from you. Whatever. I'm just like, help me to be aware as I'm going through these conversations that you're there. I think a lot of that stemmed from being a dad. It's just like, and then it's the stuff that all these guys preach all the time. It's so true though. Once you become a parent, you just read the Bible different when he's like, having a childlike faith and like all these different, nuances. You're like, oh my gosh, I just see it, like, the whole thing of like, if
Right.
you think you're good at giving
Mhm.
gifts, to your kids, how much better can I give? It's just like, so there's been a lot of ways that it showed up. I think practically though, it's really been a challenge for me of like, how do I balance my calendar in such a way that I get time where, the trap that's easy to fall into is you finish your workday, you get an hour, you
Mm.
get dinner, and then they go to bed. The kids go to bed, and then it's just you and your wife, and that you need to prioritize that too. But it's like I want more than an hour or maybe two with my daughter every day. So that's something we're trying to learn and build on and seek wise counsel. I've been asking a ton of people a couple steps ahead of us. That specific question is, dude, how do you like? What did y'all do when you were in our season of who woke up with the kids or I talked to someone recently that's like I always give my wife one morning during the Monday through Friday that she could sleep in. And I always woke, so it's like, what are those little handles, those little practical things?
Yeah,
That's what
so
I'm
you're
trying to
saying
learn
it's kind of
and hone
like,
in on right now.
I mean, would you say that, like, let's say you get to like a 2 o'clock on a Wednesday and you have like a pocket availability to, sit down and play with your daughter. Like, do you fight that urge to be like, oh, it's 2 o'clock on a Wednesday. I should still be like doing something right now? Or have you been able to kind of gather, when you're able to gather some free time in a day where it's like you can turn your brain off in that way and be able to relax and enjoy that family time? Or is that something you're still working on the balance of?
Mhm. I'd say I'm pretty good about just like popping out. Like we'll finish this, and I'll probably just pop out there because my wife stays here, and my daughter's actually napping. But I would probably, if they were out there, I would probably just go say, hey, it wouldn't be for 30 minutes or an hour. Sometimes that is the case, but I do know I have meetings the rest of the day, so that won't be today. But yeah, I'm very against the mindset of entrepreneurs thinking
Mm,
you have to like eat, sleep, and breathe work. It's like
mm,
I think you should be more effective with your time. So I'm like, I don't think it takes 13-hour workdays to like get your stuff done. I'm like, you really need about 6 hours. I'm like, if you can get 6 hours of good work in,
yeah.
I'm like, you can do a lot. And so, and that's just kind of an arbitrary field number. I don't have any math to that. But I'm like very against that whole mentality of, dude, like if you're not flying
Mm,
to China and sleeping in the factory and being there on the assembly line, I'm like, dude, I'm not doing that. I've built 3 products, 2 of them in
mm,
China, and I've never been there. Like, I'm not going out of my way to make and create more work. So, yeah, it's kind of a blend of those 2 things. How it expresses up with family, though, comes out of, like, yeah, we'll pop out sometimes, but I also do enjoy work, and I like, you know, being in a groove, and so there's definitely tensions there sometimes, but I do, uh I do love that we get to do I'll say for our flow, I always eat as long as I'm not, like, going out and getting lunch or breakfast with somebody, but if there's nothing on the counter that way, we always eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner together at our table. That's just and it's not even like I wanna be all holy and say we've
yeah.
made this like a principle. It's just like how it's organically works. Like, my wife always makes eggs, fruit, and a piece of toast for all 3 of us, and we just eat, and then I go shower and do my quiet time and start my workday, and we reconvene at lunch. So it's just how it's worked for us. Um, but it's not an everyday, and that's the rhythm side of it too that I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, dude, I love that. Able to, grab meals. I think that's so important. I think that's what a lot of men specifically may struggle with, and that I see happen a lot is, they're like, okay, first I'm the provider, right? And so they go out and they put in those 13-hour days, 6 days a week,
Mhm.
and they've built this incredible business or they've made this incredible salary, and then but they weren't that present with their kids, and then they get to a place where they can take a step back from work, when they're 55, 60 years old, and they're like, okay, now look what I built, look what I'm ready to give you. And the kids are like, dude, I don't really know who you are. Like you didn't raise me. And so it's kind of like a, was that worth it? Like now you're a baller, but
Yeah.
was it worth it? And so it's like, it's
Yeah.
always a balance where it's like, you know, once you get past a certain, those hours in a day, those 6, 7, 8, is that extra worth it, or can you delegate a little bit to make sure that your kids
Mhm.
grow up knowing, their actual father instead
Mhm.
of just their dad working? So, it's a tough
Yeah.
mix, but I think that's cool
100%.
that you already have that mindset of, there's no business is worth putting in those 13-hour days, when you have a family.
Yeah, and trust me, like, I have to fight it, and like, I have a close friend that, he works his full day, he hangs out with his family, and he typically opens up his laptop again from, like, 9 to midnight, and I'm like, "Dude, you cannot sustain that." And he's done it for, like, years, like, I know and he's a killer, don't get me wrong. Um, but I'm like, I just can't
Yeah,
do that. I'm just not wired that way. Even in school, bro, like, people are like, "Oh, I stayed up till 3 a.m. at the library last night studying." I'm like, "Bro, I went to bed at 11."
yeah,
I'm like, I was out. I got enough, like, the Lord will get me through it. Like,
absolutely.
I've done my part.
So you did say you have one of your products in the golf industry. I'm obviously a golf nut. Just grew up with it, and it's something that I love and I'm passionate about. So my question is, if you could buy any golf brand, across any, we're
Mm,
talking about, it could be equipment, apparel, whatever, training aids. What's one golf brand out there that you're like, I would love to have my name as, CEO of that company? Like what golf company would you love to be a
yeah.
part of?
Man, that's a good question. I love there's 2 things I like. I feel like a lot of my answers, by the way, today have been like, "There's 2 things." I don't know why, but that's just been my flow today. 2 things. I like high
Mm,
quality. At the same time, when you talk about being a part of the team, I love great culture, like, think about
mm,
Chick-fil-A, right? Like, a lot of unbelievable leadership lessons to learn from Chick-fil-A's leadership. Um, so I don't know a ton of these brands from, like, that leadership side, but when it comes to just, like, high quality products, I really like Vessel
yep,
bags. I think they're
yep.
slick. I think they look good, feel good. I think also too, like, another thing that comes to mind is great
Mm,
storytelling. So some of these brands like a
mm,
Malbon, right? Like, just unbelievable branding, but really at the core of that is storytelling. Um, so anyways, I think the main one though would be like Vest just like got a high
uh-huh,
quality. They're known to be high quality, and I want to be known as a guy that builds like high quality things. Um, and then obviously Titleist would fit into that, and whoever else in the OEM world. I think there's like probably 5 that I could list off, TaylorMade and whoever else. But um, yeah, I'll stick by
oh,
Vessel. That'll be
that's
my
actually
answer.
funny you said that, because literally just yesterday, I was talking to a buddy, and he plays in the MLB, and he's, once he signs this next contract, he's looking to get into golf a little bit, and he was like, "I have a set of clubs, but I, like, legit don't have a golf bag," because he doesn't play.
Yeah,
And, but knowing him, he likes high quality things, he's got the
yeah,
money to spend it, and so I was like, "Vessel, dude." Like, I didn't even tell him anything else. I was like, "Get a Vessel bag. They're high quality, they look good." He doesn't
yeah,
really know the golf world. He's like, "I'm just worried about whatever I get, equipment, getting made fun of by my buddies that actually play," and I was like,
yeah.
"Just get a Vessel bag, you'll look like you know what you're doing." So that's funny you brought that up. What do you think is a part of the golf market that is oversaturated and one that is undersaturated as far as businesses being created to suit that?
Um, I don't. That's a good question. Um, the reason I'm struggling a little bit is I watched something a couple of days ago that was like, one, I've always said, like, you don't need to recreate the wheel. A lot of guys I talk to, they're like, "Oh, dude, how'd you make this product?" and yada yada. I'm like, "Dude, go start a
Mm,
pool company. Like, you don't have to make a new thing." I'm like, "Just be really excellent and go crush." So there's this part of me that's like, you know, think golf clubs or golf shoes or whatever, like standard, range finders, whatever. That there's
mm,
several, launch monitors now. There's like several players in the space. Um, there's always room for like more excellence, and think of Malbon who comes out of nowhere and just has like great branding and great storytelling. There's a lot to be learned there. So I think some of the, obvious ones, I think there has been a lot of people getting into the rangefinder scene. It
mhm,
seems like, not that that's good or bad, but that's just from my purview. I'll also just like preface this of I enjoy golf and I'm in the golf space, but I'm like a basketball
right,
guy at heart too. So I'm just like, take what I'm saying as a grain of salt. This is an interesting perspective on my end. Um, and then yeah, I think one that's not being addressed enough and why we did Tour Caddy is like some of these range experiences are just like
Mm,
not great in my opinion. Like especially when you're in the mid to lower tier
mm,
clubs. Um, it's just like patchy grass and they have like a cheap green basket of balls with like messed up yellow range balls. And I get, there's budgets and all those different systems and stuff. But um yeah, I think that's why we
yeah,
did Tour Caddy. Is like how can we elevate the range experience? Our product's $349, so it's not gonna like
mm,
break the bank. You don't need to spend 5 grand per spot. So that's the one that we're in. I think it's been a good one to be a part
yeah,
of so
I can
far.
see that, dude. I mean, I've lived plenty of different places in the country. Florida by far has the worst
Mm,
driving ranges. It's unbelievable. Like it
really?
I've never understood it for a state that has the most golf courses, like collectively the
Yeah.
worst driving ranges I've ever seen. Now, we're not talking about like
Wow.
concession. I mean, that place is pure. We're not
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about,
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
nice places,
The
but
Sessions pure.
um,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
pu
yeah.
the common public course around, Tampa Bay area, you got
Uh-huh.
a little bit better down there in Bradenton, Sarasota, better golf, but particularly, Pinellas County and Hillsborough and even Pasco. Just I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
It's,
Interesting. I didn't know that
I
analysis.
think
That's
part
good
of
to
it is
know.
the grass, it's is
Yeah.
you go to the Northwest, someone could try literally not hard at all, and they could grow perfect grass. It's just like there's certain things where
Yeah.
but I think the driving range space is cool. I think I don't know if you've seen Golf Ranch. They've came up recently. So what
Mhm.
they've been doing is they've been buying just rundown driving ranges, and they've revamped it, right? So they've
Mm.
kinda made it
Yep,
into
cool.
they put in the top tracer technology. So it's a top golf, but
Cool.
with real balls. You're not hitting it into targets and stuff. You're hitting out to a real range, but you can see your stats right there. They've been putting in, turf putting greens right next to things. They have restaurants and bars right there. So they kind of made the top golf experience more realistic to actual golfers, to go hit real golf balls with your clubs at a real driving range, but with nice golf balls and stuff
Mm.
like that. But I always
Very
tell people
cool.
I think the coolest thing to own would be a driving range and a par 3 course, like a little par 3 course and driving range, like, that's the coolest business to me.
Yeah. One of my favorite spots, I went earlier this year for my brother-in-law's 30th, was the
Yeah,
park
I've heard
in
good
West
stuff.
Palm, and dude, I
Yeah.
just loved that. We didn't play the 18, but we did the par 3 or whatever, the little night course they have there. It was awesome. We had a
Yeah, I've
blast.
heard good things about that. Just there are certain places that are, like, just community based. I've heard that's good. If you ever go out to Oceanside, so it's just, like, north of San Diego, they have this place called Go Hill, and it's a, like,
Mm,
community course, and the vibes are different, like,
really?
dogs are out there and, music's playing, and you can play
Yeah.
barefoot and all that stuff, but it's, that's those are the places that are cool, where it's, like, a community-based thing, and I like how they made that for the park. I haven't gone out there yet, but I've heard good things.
Yeah.
We'll start to wrap up here. Just do a little rapid fire real quick, just get know you a little bit better. I have had an Auburn person on here, and I asked them this same question because when an Auburn person graduates, they love the University of Auburn. If you had to go to a
Mm.
non-Auburn SEC school, what would you have picked? At least,
Oof.
or what would you pick now if you had to go to or send your daughter to a non-Auburn SEC school?
Yeah. Oh, I'm following. I got you. We're going rapid fire. My mind immediately goes to I hope I'm not forgetting one. My mind immediately went to
Okay.
Tennessee. Obviously, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna say
Can't say
Alabama.
Alabama.
Florida's, like, just a different breed in and of itself. It's a great academic school, but it's just a whole different breed. It's like the South Florida's not the
Yeah.
South, so I'm like, Tennessee feels a little bit similar-ish to
Tennessee.
Auburn.
What do you think about Vanderbilt? You have any experience with those? Yep,
Oh, love Vanderbilt too. See, like, that's a great option. Yeah, Nashville, like, yeah. So it'd probably honestly probably be Vanderbilt, but
I
those
like
2
those.
close. I do I
Um, you're a basketball guy. What's your favorite basketball player? Could be retired, could be present. What do we got?
Yeah, I grew up so I'd say, like, I was wore number 3. Part of that, I'd say, was my dad's influence, but then beyond that, Chris
Chris
Paul
Paul.
and Dwayne Wade, were huge. Just, I loved watching them, and then, LeBron was, like, my guy at whatever point, but, Chris Paul and Dwayne Wade, I think, were probably more of, like, childhood who
Yeah,
I
I was,
watched.
originally from LA, so Kobe. Kobe was my guy growing up, so when LeBron
Mhm.
came to the Lakers, I was like, "This is gross to me. This is not
Yeah.
good."
It feels weird,
So
doesn't it?
newer golfer, what's your favorite golfer?
Oof, it's a great question. Honestly, I mean, I'll give you another answer, but genuinely, I
Mm,
really like Scotty for the
mhm.
Christian value side. Like, I think he actually articulates the
Yeah.
faith pretty well. So I really respect that about him. Um, Outside of that, um, we're kind of in this whole
Mhm.
YouTube golf space now. Um, so I feel like seeing some of these guys' personalities has been really interesting. Um, I could speak about a lot of the YouTube stuff, but I will go ahead and say, man, this one's tough. I kind of like the
Mm.
Colin Morikawa. I think he like his vibe has been pretty interesting on course. JT was hilarious on, I think,
Yeah.
Grant's video where he, like, holed out or whatever. So there's been cool seeing some of the different personalities, but Scotty's, like, my go-to, even though I feel like that's a cop out. And then after that, it'd probably be, like, a Colin or a
Yeah, see,
JT
I'm
somewhere in
frustrated
there.
Scotty got so good because now it's such a common, like, "Oh, I'm just a Scotty." Because I was a Scotty fan before he even won, and it's like, now I'm like, "Dude, you got so
Really?
good where now I look
Your
like
OG.
a just lame saying that he's my favorite player just because he's
Yeah,
number 1," but it was like I remember I shot him a
yeah.
DM. This was back in 2021. We were getting married in the Dallas area, and I was like, "Scotty, me and a bunch of the boys are going to play around the golf. You wanna, stop on by for
Yeah,
the bachelor party?" He didn't show up. I
that's
won't hold that
awesome.
against him, but that was back when he was,
Yeah,
maybe 40th, 50th in the
that's
world, so
hilarious.
I was a Scotty guy back then.
Mhm.
Um,
That's awesome.
what's the one entrepreneur you look up to? Like, your number 1 guy?
Man. Um, I don't know if I have an entrepreneur guy. Like, I can talk about, like, personal relationships, but honestly, dude, and it's gonna be obvious once I say it. I learned a lot of good business stuff
Huh.
from the Bible. So actually, I think I would say pastors. Like there are several like pastor podcasts, like the
Mm,
Grow Leader podcast, right? Or Chad Beach with the leadership lean in, or Mature Me with Rich Wilkerson. Like there's so many practical principles that just being in the seat of entrepreneurship, those things apply. So I wouldn't say I literally look to them from like business advice, but like Chris Hodges, Rich Wilkerson, Chad Veach, like some of
mhm.
these like prominent Christian podcasts I just listen to frequently, and there's always a nugget there that I feel like I'm like, oh, I can totally apply that to what I'm doing. Outside of that, I mean, you have to respect what David Green's done with Hobby Lobby or what the Kathy family's done with Chick-fil-A. It's like, but there's not true proximity there, where I'm like really learning from them
Yeah,
on the
it's twice
daily.
you brought up Chick-fil-A now. I think I might be having to hit that after this. That sounds too good.
Dude, it's got to.
We'll end it right here. Just kind of broad overview. One advice for a young entrepreneur who, knows what he wants to do, he or she wants to do. They want to build a business, build businesses. I know it's kind of broad, but what's one piece of advice you have to leave them today?
Yeah, I think just literally taking that next step and don't get it's what we talked about earlier, but this is what I would say. Like don't get caught up in it has to be perfect. You can get so overwhelmed by, okay, this is the vision that I have and you're like, okay, I want to make that vision come to life. It will happen, right? God willing. But just take the first step and then take the next step and then take the next step. Oftentimes I found that we ask for like more clarity from God or more whatever to understand where it's going or how to build it. It's like he probably
Mm,
already told you the next step to take and you just haven't done that part yet. And once you do that part, then he'll tell you the next part. So I think if you can lean into that, that's always done me well. And when I haven't, it's not done me well. And so it can
I
speak
like
to
that,
both
dude.
sides of it.
It's just one step at a time. I think, it can be such a, oh, I want to grow this 5, 10, $50 million business, and you have all these, where should I start? Where should I start? Where should I start? Kind of things. And it's like, just take the first step. I hear Pastor Josh Howardson, talk about it. He goes, if you feel like you got to save the whole world, you're
Mhm.
not going to do anything because you're just going to be so overwhelmed by all the different decisions you can make. Make one decision, do it, then follow it up, follow it up, follow it up. So I like that a lot. Chase, it's a pleasure to have you on, dude. It was good to get you know a little better. We'll definitely have to play around in golf here soon. And yeah, we just appreciate you coming on. And that's going to wrap up July's episode of Johnny Talks Pod. I want to thank Chase again for coming on. He was very insightful. It was good to learn more about him. Again, he's the young guy, like he said. He's only 26 years old and like already has 3 to 4 business ventures he started. He's just getting started. So make sure and go give him a follow. If you haven't, I will link his Instagram in the description. I think, he's someone that we could be scrolling TV here and the next few years and see him popping up on Shark Tank with another venture that he's coming out with. I'm sure he's going to do many incredible things in the business world. So I appreciate him for coming on and giving us some insight on entrepreneurship and doing that as a Christian and father and all that stuff. So again, appreciate Chase for coming on. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Helps us out, helps push us out farther, and helps also us book, more prominent guests. When people are, when I reach out for people to book interviews, they're wanting to see, are people enjoying these? Is their message gonna get out there? And so if you're able to subscribe and leave a good review, that helps us, establish the podcast a little bit easier, make it a little bit easier to get some guests on here that you guys would enjoy. But that's all for July's episode. We will see you in August. Until next time, peace out.